The military simulation came to a halt. A crucial command in Arabic had been mistranslated. A group of soldiers stood there, confused. Then, from the doorway, a voice called out, "He said hold position, not advance." Everyone turned in complete silence. At the back of the room, standing in the shadows of the equipment, a 72-year-old man stopped scrubbing the floor. Gray hair, blue janitor uniform, the name Raymond stitched on his chest. The general slowly walked toward him. "How the hell do you know that?" Raymond took a deep breath as if pulling the memory from deep inside. "I did this for 30 years, before I started mopping hallways. At Fort Huachuca in southern Arizona, the day begins before sunrise. Helicopters cut through the orange sky while soldiers are already running along the training tracks, their sweat mixing with the fine desert dust. Amidst all this machinery, an invisible team keeps everything running. The janitors arrive at 5 in the morning. They clean restrooms, empty trash bins, polish the hallways. No one sees them. No one greets them. They're ghosts in blue uniforms. Raymond Carter has been part of this invisibility for the past 2 years. At 72, he pushes a cleaning cart through the same hallways where generals plan international operations. His co-workers respect him. He's punctual, polite, never complains. To the world, Raymond is just another retiree working to make ends meet. But no one suspects that behind those tired eyes lies a living archive. 3 decades of military intelligence experience. That morning, a joint simulation exercise was underway involving 5 countries. The Americans were coordinating with the Germans, Italians, French, and Polish. A simulated hostage rescue in hostile territory. Real-time multilingual communication. Raymond had just finished cleaning the adjoining room when he heard the first problem. The automated system translated hold position from Arabic to English as advance. The soldiers hesitated. Confusion spread. In a real situation, several soldiers would have died. "Stop everything," shouted the German major. Raymond kept cleaning, but his ears caught every word. The error was basic. "Damn it," growled General Grant. "Call it off. There's got to be a system failure." Raymond let go of the mop. He walked slowly toward the doorway. "He said hold position, not advance." Everyone turned in complete silence. "The issue isn't the system, sir. It's the contextual translation in Arabic." German Major Klaus Weber turned to Grant. "Who is that?" "Never seen him, but judging by the uniform, probably one of the staff." The general stepped forward slowly. "How the hell do you know that?" Raymond took a deep breath, as if reaching into a distant memory. "I did this for 30 years, before I started cleaning hallways." The room erupted in whispers. "Retired Sergeant Raymond Carter." Grant looked up. "Why the hell are you mopping floors?" Raymond picked the mop back up. "Because I need to eat, sir." "Raymond, would you like to help with this exercise?" "If I can be useful, sir." "Useful? You might just save an exercise worth thousands of dollars." Raymond returned to his unlikely post. Standing among generals and colonels, his experienced fingers corrected commands, fine-tuned translations, guided protocols. Within 20 minutes, the simulation was running flawlessly. Soldiers from 5 different countries communicated without confusion. Maneuvers flowed. The exercise was a complete success. Raymond Carter was born in 1952 on a farm in Texas. At 18, he enlisted in the Army. The Cold War was heating up. Young, smart, and gifted with languages, he was assigned to military intelligence. The 70s and 80s were intense. Missions in East Germany, covert operations in the Middle East, training local allies. Raymond spoke to Russian spies in Berlin, negotiated with leaders in Afghanistan, and coordinated NATO operations in 7 different languages. He was respected, decorated, essential. In 1985, he married Martha, a military nurse. They had 2 children, David and Sarah. The family moved from post to post, Germany, South Korea, Saudi Arabia. By 1990, Raymond had risen to the rank of first sergeant. He led intelligence units in Iraq and Afghanistan after 9/11. His reports went straight to the Pentagon. Presidents were briefed using his analysis. But at age 60, retirement came. Just like that, the man who once spoke to foreign generals found himself at home. No mission, no purpose. Martha tried to cheer him up, but Raymond felt lost. 5 years ago, Martha passed away from cancer. Raymond fell apart. His military pension couldn't cover the medical debts. He sold the house and moved into a modest apartment in Sierra Vista, near Fort Huachuca. He needed to work. He applied for military consultant jobs, translation roles, instructor positions. But the answer was always the same. Too old. Your certifications are outdated. The market is too competitive. Then one day he saw a job posting. Janitor, Fort Huachuca, part-time. For 2 years, Raymond listened to conversations in languages he knew fluently, yet remained invisible. Until one translation error changed everything. Because competence doesn't grow old. It just waits for the right moment. The next morning, Grant called Raymond into his office. "Take a seat, Sergeant. I'm just Raymond now, sir. Not after yesterday. I need you for another exercise. Thursday. A simulation with NATO representatives. 12 countries involved." Raymond hesitated. "I still need to finish my cleaning shift." "Forget the cleaning. You'll be our temporary language consultant. $500 a day." "500, sir. I make 80 a day as a janitor." "I read your full file. Your reports on ISIS cells were critical in 5 successful operations. Your analysis of intercepted communications in Kabul saved American lives." Raymond looked down at his hands. "That was a long time ago. Knowledge doesn't expire, Sergeant, especially yours." On Thursday, Raymond showed up at the simulation center wearing a borrowed dress shirt. He didn't own proper military uniforms anymore. International officers from multiple countries arrived to evaluate complex protocols, multi-language communications, and crisis scenarios. Raymond took a quiet position near the official interpreters. Within 2 hours, he identified 17 critical translation errors, all due to a lack of military context. French commander Captain Latre approached. "Désolé, mais qui êtes-vous?" "Raymond Carter, consultant linguistique temporaire." Impressed, Captain Latre tried to speak in English to praise Raymond. "Incredible. You don't even have an accent. You're better than any professional translator I've ever worked with." During lunch, international officers sought out Raymond, not for translation, but for guidance on regional nuances that only decades of field experience could teach. From a distance, General Grant watched it all unfold. At 5 p.m., when the exercise ended, he pulled Raymond aside for a private conversation. "Sergeant, you just made possible the smoothest communication we've ever seen in a multinational exercise." "I was just doing my job, sir." "No, you did the job of an entire team of translators and consultants, and you did it better." Grant took a deep breath. "I want to offer you a permanent position." Monday, 7 a.m. Raymond parked his 1992 Ford pickup in the same spot as always, but this time he didn't grab the cleaning cart. Instead, he walked toward the Central Administrative Building. A new sign hung on the door. Senior Strategic Consultant, Operational Linguistics, Sergeant Raymond Carter. He paused in front of the sign. 2 years ago, he felt invisible pushing mops. Today, he had his own office and access to classified communications. General Grant greeted him personally. "Welcome to your new role, Sergeant. Your salary's been increased with additional benefits. You'll report directly to me on international matters." Raymond signed the paperwork with steady hands. "What's my first mission?" "Review all international communication protocols on base. Identify weaknesses, suggest improvements, train the translators. You have full authority." That afternoon, Raymond settled into his new office. The desk had been empty for months. He carefully arranged dictionaries in 7 languages, maps, and military protocol manuals, and in one corner, he placed a symbolic reminder, his blue janitor's uniform, to remind himself that a person's worth doesn't fade, even when they're far from the spotlight. At 6 p.m., on his way out, he passed by the janitorial wing. His former colleagues greeted him with surprise and pride. "Raymond, we heard what you did. You never stop amazing us. Congratulations." "Thank you, everyone. Get some rest." We all deserve it. See you tomorrow. Rumors spread like wildfire. In the mess hall, soldiers whispered, "Did you hear? The old janitor turned into a sergeant overnight." "What's that about? Must be some friend of the commander." "No way. Nobody promotes a janitor to strategic consultant just like that." The reactions were mixed. Younger officers showed visible discomfort. Lieutenant Morrison, 38, West Point graduate. "This is ridiculous. I have a master's in international relations and it's taken me years to reach a consultant role. And now a janitor becomes senior consultant in a week?" Major Davis chimed in. "Probably a political move. A veteran, older guy makes for good PR." At the first team meeting, Raymond faced the resistance head-on. Morrison challenged him in front of everyone. "Sergeant Carter, what's your academic background for this position?" Raymond looked at him calmly. "The University of Real Life, Lieutenant. 30 years talking to people in the places I was deployed." "But do you have current certifications in simultaneous translation?" "No, sir." A heavy silence filled the room. Grant stepped in. "Lieutenant Morrison, Sergeant Carter holds field credentials no textbook can offer." After the meeting, Raymond approached Morrison. "Lieutenant, you were right to ask about qualifications. That shows you're a responsible officer." Morrison looked surprised. "But competence doesn't only come from diplomas. It comes from experience under pressure. I'm not here to compete with you. I'm here to contribute and to share what I've learned." Morrison's hostility began to fade. It was as if Raymond's words had shown him something deeper. True leadership builds bridges, where others dig trenches. Raymond's first challenges in his new role came fast. The first week was brutal. He received 47 communication protocols to review. Technical documents in German, French, Arabic, and Russian. Material that had collected mistakes for years. He worked 12 hours a day. At night, in his modest apartment, he spread papers across the kitchen table, stacks of technical dictionaries, open military manuals, and a borrowed base laptop running late into the evening. The first real conflict came on Wednesday. General Bradford, head of operations, questioned a correction Raymond had made to a Russian protocol. "Sergeant Carter, I noticed you altered some field study terms. How do you know that?" "Because I saw Russian soldiers respond differently to those terms in Chechnya back in 1999. "Excellent. Carry on, Sergeant." But not all officers supported Raymond. Major Collins, a former official translator, felt threatened. "Grant is making a mistake. That man doesn't have formal academic credentials. He could trigger a diplomatic incident if he slips up." Collins began pressuring other officers. He formed a quiet resistance. On Friday, he made his move. During a video conference with German commanders, Collins forgot to inform Raymond of last-minute protocol changes. Raymond improvised flawlessly, but Collins later used it to undermine him. "See, he wasn't prepared. That's unprofessional." General Grant heard the rumors and called Collins in. "Major, what's your issue with Sergeant Carter?" "I have no personal issues, sir, only professional concerns." "What concerns?" "He didn't follow standard procedures during the video call. That meeting was important, because you failed to inform him of the procedures." Collins went pale. "Sir, Major Collins, Sergeant Carter has my full support." After Collins left, Grant called Raymond in. "Did you know he was sabotaging you?" "I did." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because insecure men expose themselves. You just have to give them enough rope." Grant smiled. "And how did you handle that video call so well without preparation?" "General, I learned to improvise when lives depended on it. A video meeting doesn't even come close to what I've faced." 3 weeks later, the real test arrived. A diplomatic crisis erupted. American and German soldiers had a serious misunderstanding during a joint exercise in Poland. Cultural miscommunications escalated, nearly leading to a physical confrontation. The incident threatened NATO relations. General Grant called an emergency meeting. "We need someone to go to Poland and fix this. Who has the experience and skill to mediate an international conflict?" All eyes turned to Raymond. "Sergeant Carter, will you take this on?" "When do I leave?" "Tonight." Raymond flew to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. then traveled by military vehicle into Poland. When he arrived at the Polish base, the atmosphere was tense. American and German soldiers barely spoke to one another. Commanders were holding separate briefings. Cooperation had collapsed. Raymond requested a joint meeting with all parties involved. "Gentlemen, I'm Sergeant Raymond Carter, consultant from Fort Huachuca. I'm here to understand what happened." American Commander Sergeant Johnson spoke first. "The Germans accused us of ignoring safety protocols, but we followed our standard procedures." German Commander Oberst Müller fired back. "Ihre Standardprozeduren ignorierten unsere etablierten Sicherheitsmaßnahmen." Raymond turned to the Germans and replied fluently, "Oberst Müller, verstehe ich Sie richtig? Die Amerikaner befolgten ihre Protokolle, aber ignorierten dabei ihre Sicherheitsstandards?" Müller was visibly surprised to hear flawless German. "Ja, genau. Endlich jemand, der uns versteht." Raymond spent the next 2 hours mediating, switching seamlessly between English and German. He listened, clarified, and translated not just words, but intent. Eventually, he uncovered the root of the problem. A simple difference in the interpretation of the phrase, standard safety procedure. For the Americans, it meant a well-established routine. For the Germans, it referred to the minimum mandatory protocol. Raymond turns to both groups. "You're fighting over semantics, not real differences. You both want maximum security. You just use different terms." He proposes a new common terminology, enhanced security protocol in English, verstärktes Sicherheitsprotokoll in German. In 3 hours, the conflict was resolved. Müller approaches Raymond. "Herr Carter, Sie haben einen diplomatischen Zwischenfall verhindert. Vielen Dank." "Bitte schön, Oberst. Sind wir nicht alle auf derselben Seite?" Johnson also thanked him. "Sergeant Carter, you saved our partnership with the Germans." Back at Fort Huachuca, Raymond handed a detailed report to Grant. "Excellent work, Sergeant. The Germans sent official praise. They said you were diplomatically brilliant and culturally respectful. I just did what anyone doing their job would have done." "No, Raymond, you did what only you could do." From that day on, no one questioned Raymond Carter's competence again. His phone rang with consultation requests from other bases. International commanders asked for his presence in joint exercises. Young officers sought his guidance. Respect earned through results, not titles. Because competence speaks louder than any speech, and experience should count more than any diploma. 1 week after returning from Poland, Raymond found a plain envelope on his desk. No sender. Just, "For Sergeant Carter," handwritten on the front. He opened it, curious. "Sergeant Carter, you don't know me. I'm Sergeant Joe Martinez, retired 3 years ago. I work as a night security guard in Phoenix. I heard your story through a friend who serves at Fort Huachuca. How you went from janitor to strategic consultant. Sir, that changed my life. I felt invisible since retiring, as if my 22 years of service meant nothing in the civilian world. I was thinking of giving up on finding better work. Your story showed me that our experience has value, that veterans can still contribute, even when the world sees us as too old. Today, I applied for a private security instructor position. I mentioned my military background with pride, not shame. I don't know if I'll get the job, but I know your story gave me the courage to try. A grateful veteran, Joe Martinez." Raymond read the letter 3 times. His hands trembled slightly on the 3rd reading. He hadn't expected this. He was just trying to do his job, earn his paycheck, stay relevant. He never imagined his story would inspire other veterans. That night at home, Raymond wrote a reply. "Sergeant Martinez, your letter moved me deeply. You're right. Our experience has immense value. Sometimes all we need is someone who looks past the uniform we wear now and sees who we really are. Please keep me updated on your application. And remember, you are not alone. Thousands of veterans face the same challenges. Maybe it's time we do something about that. With respect, Sergeant Raymond Carter." As he sealed the envelope, Raymond had a revelation. His promotion wasn't just about him. It was about all the veterans who still have so much to offer. Raymond shared his idea with General Grant, and a few weeks later, he was called into a special meeting with the commanders of Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, and Fort Leavenworth. "Sergeant Carter," Grant began, "your work here has impressed top command. We want to expand your program to other bases and create a network of veteran consultants, specialists, identify retired personnel with underused skills, and integrate them into strategic roles." Raymond leaned forward. "Excellent, General, excellent." General Morrison from Fort Bragg added, "Exactly. We want you as the national coordinator." "And my current role here?" Raymond asked. "You'd keep it, but with a broader scope. You'd divide your time between Fort Huachuca and other bases, implementing the veteran reintegration program." Raymond paused to think. "And what exactly would you want me to do?" "Identify overlooked talent, create assessment processes, establish reintegration criteria, turn a pilot program into a national policy." Raymond thought of Joe Martinez, the retired sergeant who had written to him. How many more were out there like him? "I accept on one condition." "What is it?" "I want full autonomy to hire my own team." "Agreed." 2 months later, Raymond launched the Veteran Specialist Reintegration Program, VSRP. His first hire, Joe Martinez, now Regional Security Coordinator in Phoenix. Within a few months, VSRP had reintegrated 327 veterans into strategic positions. The savings for the government, $12 million annually. From avoided external consulting fees, the gain in expertise, immeasurable. But Raymond measured success differently. Every week he received letters from reintegrated veterans, stories of men and women who had regained their professional dignity, their sense of purpose, their lost identity. One letter, in particular, stayed with him. "Sergeant Carter, I'm Helen Torres, former logistics sergeant. I'd been waiting tables for 3 years. Thanks to VSRP, I now coordinate supplies for NATO exercises. My 12-year-old daughter asked me yesterday, 'Mom, why are you smiling more lately?' I told her because I remembered who I am. Thank you for reminding us that we're not invisible. Helen." 5 years later, at the age of 77, Raymond decided to retire for good. Not because he couldn't keep going. His mind remained sharp, his skills intact, but he felt he had planted enough seeds for the forest to grow on its own. The retirement ceremony took place at Fort Huachuca, where it had all begun. In attendance, the Secretary of Defense, commanders from 15 military bases, thousands of veterans impacted by the VSRP, family, and friends. The main courtyard was decorated with flags. From every country Raymond had worked with over 5 decades. General Grant, now nearing his own retirement, gave a speech. 5 years ago, Raymond Carter was mopping these very hallways. Today, he has transformed the way our nation sees and values retired veterans. Over 10,000 veterans and family members have been reintegrated through his programs, hundreds of millions of dollars saved. But numbers don't capture the true impact. Dignity restored, purpose renewed, lives transformed. Wearing his uniform one last time, Raymond stepped up to the podium. He hadn't prepared a long speech. That was never his style. "When I started cleaning these hallways, I thought my career was over, that I had lost everything that once defined me." He looked out into the crowd, recognizing familiar faces. "I've learned that true identity doesn't come from a uniform or a rank, and that real experience never expires. It simply waits for the right moment to speak. Wisdom doesn't retire, because true competence transcends age, and we veterans carry decades of knowledge no university can teach. The kind of knowledge only real life provides, because real veterans don't need to prove their worth. They just need the opportunity to show it. My final mission is this, to remind every veteran that their story doesn't end with retirement. It just begins a new chapter." After the ceremony, Raymond walked alone through the same halls he once cleaned. The janitorial department still operated in the same place. He stopped at the doorway and greeted the current janitors. "Mr. Raymond," Mary, one of them, called out. "We heard about your retirement." "Thank you, Mary. You never forgot about us." "How could I? You taught me that dignity and honor don't come from position, but from character." Raymond pulled out his blue janitor's uniform, still hanging in the closet. "Mary, may I leave this here?" "Of course, Mr. Raymond. It would be an honor." Walking to the parking lot, Raymond reflected on the journey. Driving home from work for the last time, he smiled, because he knew he had left behind a legacy. And it wasn't about the countless personal achievements. True legacies aren't measured in titles. They're measured by how many lives you transform and how many doors you open for others. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments. Click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story, especially for you.